Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3959 BN. Today's date is July 29th, 2026. The title of the episode is Fauci Fell Right into the Trap. Sometimes you must show the people pain, accountability. Now, did you know a new survey found that 1 in 3 Americans feel most self-conscious about their body at the beach? More than anywhere else, summer is here. The trips, the pool days, the photos are already happening. And if you've been eating better, cutting back, generally trying, but cravings keep taking over no matter what, that's not you being weak. Your hunger hormones are working against you. This is why I'm obsessed with GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of a pharmaceutical override, it uses clinical studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to naturally restore my body's own hunger control signals. In clinical studies, it raises GLP-1 levels by 56% and cut calorie intake by 20%. No prescriptions, no needle, just quieter cravings, real fullness, and a body I'm actually proud of this summer. To kick off summer, get 51% off only at trimwithx22.com. Every order comes with free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and free express shipping with subscriptions. Once again, that is trimwithx22.com, or just click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech, fake news, the puppet masters, you can see over and over and over again, the deep state players fall right into the trap. And Fauci, he fell right into the trap. You know, sometimes you got to show the people the truth. And think about this. This entire time, going all the way back to the pandemic, the fake news, Fauci, the D's, and everyone else was trying to convince people that everything that Fauci said was true. And now that his diary came out and people see him for who he really is, a liar, a fraud, a hoax, people are starting to question all of this. And today we had the Senate hearing. And if people thought, oh, this was going to be arrests or indictments, that's kind of ridiculous. That's not what the Senate hearing is. And if anyone really thought that Fauci was going to answer questions, because he would just continually incriminate himself, it wouldn't make any sense. And then people say, well, wait a minute. He got a pardon from Biden, from the auto pen, which that's going to disappear too. But let's just say the pardon's there. How is he allowed to plead the fifth? Well, let me ask you a simple question. When the sign says crimes are illegal, what do criminals do? When the law says murder is illegal, what do criminals do? When shoplifting is illegal, what do criminals do? Criminals are criminals are criminals. Just because the law says, and there's a Supreme Court case that says it, that you don't get to plead the fifth, well, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to plead the fifth. Now, are there repercussions for this? Absolutely. The Senate could hold him in contempt, which I do believe that's what Rand Paul said he was going to do. He was going to have a vote. I think it's going to happen next week. Now, does this mean he automatically goes to jail? No, it does not. It is then, once they vote on it, of course, then it is referred to the DOJ. The DOJ must take up the case. And he can go to prison from anywhere from a month, I think, all the way up to a year and pay a fine. But again, the criminal is taking that chance, because if he spoke in the Senate, it would be a lot worse for him. And this is why his attorneys decided to say, you know what, I'd rather you break the law this way, because the other way, it's going to be a disaster. Now, this doesn't mean he gets off. This doesn't mean there's not going to be a grand jury that's impaneled or already impaneled, and we're going to see an indictment against Fauci. What this did, it showed the American people who he was. It showed the American people that he's a criminal, that he's evil, that he's a monster, that he lies, and he can't help himself. This gets people talking. This is spread all over social media. Now, the fake news most likely will not report on this. And I'm not saying every single fake news station. Fox News will probably report on it. But if you look at maybe CNN or MS Now or the other ones, they probably won't. But people will see it via social media. And this is the problem for the fake news today. And as people see this, the people then start to question everything that happened during the pandemic. And if that's a lie, then what else is a lie? Because we're seeing a lot of lying going on right now. So what is Fauci feeling right now? He's feeling pain every step of the way. Remember, it's not time to bring everyone to court. We don't have the judiciary yet. And we must have the grand juries look at all the evidence and come out with a ruling and then indict these people. Remember, these are federal crimes. He didn't steal a bag of chips from a store. This is a federal crime. First, you really do the indictments. You have a grand jury. You don't arrest them because what is that going to do? They're just going to go back on the streets, just like Fauci, just like Comey. Yeah, the judge wasn't going to say, hey, you're going to prison until your trial. No, they said, you know something, you can be on your own reconnaissance. It's not that big of a deal. The same thing would have happened with all these people. So everyone go, we need arrests. It's kind of ridiculous. What we really need is the grand jury to come back with the indictments. That's what's very important. But you have to remember what's happening right now. People are learning. People are starting to understand what this was all about. And yes, this is going to lead into rigging of the election in 2020. Because you have to remember, they used the virus and forced it on the people and lied to the people so they can overthrow the United States government. Remember, they think of the people as stupid sheep, the herd, and they don't care about the sheep, the herd. And I think it's becoming very, very evident they really do not. I mean, if you were confused before, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer every single day. So each one of these individuals, they're going to be falling into the same exact trap. And when you start to see all the different pieces of the puzzle start to come together, that's when people are going to start to realize what's going on. And I think what's happening right now, for those people that didn't want to believe it, all of a sudden they have questions. Wait a minute, he lied? Wait a minute. He was giving us two different figures, one in his diary and one he was reporting on the news? Wait a minute. He told us that if you get vaccinated, you wouldn't spread the virus. But in reality, he knew it didn't work. So here we are. He talked about how it was only from the wet market. It occurred naturally. He knew from the very beginning it was from the lab. He was creating it. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that. And that's why this was so important. It might have seemed a little bit ridiculous, but the people must see it. The people must see him. They must see him sweating. They must see him say, I plead the fifth. The criminal who was pardoned is pleading the fifth, which basically is against the law, actually, if you really think about it. And the repercussions for that is contempt. And that's why Rand Paul now is going to be voting on this. And of course, the D's, throughout this entire thing, what were they doing? They're saying, I don't know why we're here. This is ridiculous. Instead of going, holy crap, you lied about releasing the virus? You lied. Again, they're being instructed to stay away from this topic because they know exactly what happened. They might not know the entire plan, which I think a lot of them do, but they were told to stay away from this subject. And that's exactly what they did. And they tried to divert everything. They really didn't want to ask any questions, except for Fetterman, actually. Fetterman is the only one that actually came out and said, you know something? Yeah, he tricked all of us. And basically, he lied to us. And there needs to be accountability for this. So here we are. The general public now is starting to learn about this. I'm not saying that every person's going to wake up and go, holy crap, I see it now. But I'm going to tell you right now, the people that heard about it before, the people that had questions before, the people who thought something was off, they're all starting to figure it out. And those people that believed that they were doing the right thing, now they're starting to realize, wait a minute, they lied to us. Remember, the deep state system has been lying to us for a very long time. They've been lying to the people to keep their system operational. And they've been using events. They've been hurting people. And I think this is becoming a fact now that nobody can deny. And all the conspiracy theorists out there saying it was a pandemic, the masks don't work, the vaccine is a bioweapon, they're trying to control or reduce the population, they're trying to make people ill. Hey, what'd you notice so far? It all came true. So once again, you could see why there were a lot of people that were censored. You could see why a lot of doctors were censored, because they were trying to tell the truth. And once again, the deep state players, that is a crime in itself because they didn't want the truth out there. They wanted you to get hurt. They wanted you to get sick. They wanted you in the position they brought you into. I mean, it's an awful thing. It's evil, downright evil. That's the only word I could think of right now. Now, we're going to be talking a lot more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about the Wisconsin brewer who, on the occasion of the attempt on Trump's life at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in April, he promised his patrons free beer on the event of Trump's death. Now, that is very interesting because you know what just happened? His license was yanked. So the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported that the liberal activist and brewery owner Kirk Bangstad is vowing to fight tooth and nail after receiving a letter from the State Department of Revenue revoking his license, his permit to operate in Wisconsin. Now, a lot of people are thinking, well, it's because of what he said about Trump, but that's not the reason they're revoking his license. He didn't lose his license for political reasons. He didn't lose his license for wishing bodily harm to the president of the United States. He didn't lose it at the request of anyone in the Trump administration. He lost it for violating the rules of transporting beer across state lines. Karma. It always gets you in the end, doesn't it? Absolutely unbelievable. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is the fake news. They're still pushing their fake news reporting, trying to convince the people that the illegals shouldn't be deported. And they're trying to convince the people that it's a question, self-deport or not, coming out of 2 News. Haitians face a big decision. Really? If you're here illegally, it's not that big of a decision. Homeland Security says it's really not that big of a decision. Leave now or get deported. So here's your decision. You either self-deport, use the money to fly home, and if you want to come back here, you can go to the port of entry, you can get vetted, or if you don't, you'll just be picked up and you'll be sent on your way and you won't have a chance of coming back to the United States and to give it, another try. So it's really not that big of a deal. But again, look what the fake news is trying to do here. They're trying to convince the illegals that you do have some type of choice. You really don't, because you broke the law, you're here illegally, and no matter which way you look at it, one way or another, you're leaving. Very interesting. Now, the other thing that we know is that when Biden was in office, we know that they were trafficking children into this country. And some of them were put into labor camps. Some of them were sex slaves. And we could see that at this point in time, it's all coming true. Now, again, the conspiracies, once again, where people said, no, that's not true. The children are not going into labor camps. They're not being used as sex slaves. Well, as they find the children, that's exactly where they were. Steve Hilton put this out and said, whistleblower, migrant children forced into prostitution after Xavier Becerra dismantled vetting procedures at HHS. We've seen in Panama, there's prostitution. I've seen young Latinas working those streets when that was not the case before. They look very young and were all mostly Latinas. And once again, that's exactly where they ended up. They worked the streets. They were sex slaves. Somebody owned them. They were in labor camps. And now we have the FBI and others. They are working with sheriffs. The FBI is working with sheriffs, the other law enforcement, to actually save these children. FBI Director Kash Patel put this out and said, look at Florida. Homicide rate down 20 points. Drug overdose down 20%. 7,400 missing children found and identified. Enough fentanyl seized to kill 225 million Americans in just 15 months. The FBI is proud to stand with these sheriffs. You don't post numbers like that by accident. That's how you get things done. Director of the FBI, Kash Patel. And that's absolutely true. He's working very, very hard to reverse everything the Biden administration has done. And he's finding the most wanted. He's finding the children. He's bringing the terrorists, the gang members, the cartel members to justice. And remember, these people have been free roaming the country, and the FBI 1.0 never found any of them. Isn't that interesting? And the other thing that we could see that's very interesting is we could see that Iran, no matter what happens, they're never going to be able to make a deal. Because you have to remember, the central bank, the deep state players, they're going to allow Iran to go down with the ship, the IRGC, because once again, they know if they lose Iran, they lose control of the pricing of oil. They lose pretty much everything. And they rather fight to the very end. Now, you have to remember, the deep state players, they're not going to give up. And they will fight to the very, very end. They rather die in a fight than give up and go to trial. So every battle from this point on, across the world and in this country, they're not just going to say, hey, we give, you got us, we lied, we're going to go to jail, we're going to sit in a courtroom. They're going to fight every step of the way. Trump, he knows this. He knows that we have to finish this fight. This is a war. Yes, it's an information war. Yes, it's a physical war across the globe. Soon it will be a physical war in this country. But again, we have the leverage. And every step of the way, what is the fake news going to do? They're going to continually try to distract. They're going to put out disinformation, misinformation to confuse the public. This is what they do. They're working for the criminal syndicate. Remember that. Nothing's changed in that regard. Yes, they're getting weaker. Yes, Trump has more leverage. Yes, the counterinsurgency is getting stronger and stronger. But the propaganda network is still there. They didn't dismantle it. The deep state players are still there. The Ds are still in Congress. The Ds have still infiltrated many of the local governments across the country. The judiciary is still corrupt. So we're still in a war. We're still fighting against the deep state players. And they'll continue to fight to the very, very end where they have nothing left. That is where Trump is bringing all of this. He's going to make them so weak, so scared. They're going to feel pain every step of the way until they have nothing left. Soon, the last part of this will most likely them committing suicide, or they will be on the run. But until that time, they're going to fight with everything that they have. And Iran is no different. The central bankers, Obama, Hillary Clinton, the deep state players, they're telling Iran, if you give in, we're all screwed. That's why they're going to fight to the very, very end. Trump knows this. He knows what they're trying to do. And it seems that Reuters is putting out a report that Iran is expected to receive its first shipment of 300 to 400 Chinese-made shoulder-fired air defense systems within weeks. Now, again, when you start to think about what's going on here, we know that Trump came out with a post saying, listen, he spoke to Xi, he spoke to Putin, and they're not supplying weapons. Now, Xi can come out and say, hey, we're not supplying weapons, but what do the fake news like to do? Remember, this is from an anonymous source. This is not from an official or anything like that. Is this starting to look like a false flag to try to bring other countries into play? Let's see. We have Ukraine trying to bring Russia into the war. Iran, would like to hit Ukraine now. Ukraine is saying we're stopping Russia from supplying weapons to Iran. Now we have a report that China is supplying weapons. Hey, do you think the deep state players are trying to set up a false flag, trying to get these countries involved in the war? Because where do you think they want this to go? They want this to be expanded. They want this to go into World War III. But what happens if Xi and Putin are not on the same page? What happens if they're not going to join in with the war that the deep state players are trying to start? Well, you can't get World War III off, the start line. It's kind of hard. Now, are there weapons being snuck into Iran? Most likely, probably from the deep state players. And when someone sees a missile launched from a man-pad, they're going to say, look, it's from China. And once again, I think this is how they're trying to get World War III kicked off. But I don't think it's going to work the way they think it's going to work. They're going to try. They're going to push it. And they're going to push very, very hard. But in the end, I think it's going to fail, just like everything else, because they don't have the leverage. They're trying everything to try to expand this war. And the deep state players, EU, and the rest, this is what they're trying to do. You have to remember, those installed leaders in Europe, they're screwed because the people are not on their side. The poll numbers are in single digits now. And if they don't have a war, if they don't have a major event, they're all going to be removed from their positions. And the only way they can stay in their positions if there's some type of major war, because then they can make the case, I shouldn't be removed right now. And yes, that's what the dictators are going to do. Just when you look at Ukraine, didn't Zelensky stop all elections? See the pattern there? See, this country, it's different. No matter if we're in a war or not, we always have elections. But look what the U.S. Central Command has done. At 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time, this was yesterday, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps forces launched multiple ballistic missiles from Iran in an attempted surprise attack on U.S. force based in the Middle East. All Iranian missiles were successfully intercepted. U.S. forces remain vigilant and at a high state of readiness. So their weapons have no effect whatsoever, and the U.S. is able to stop their weapons. And yes, does Iran have a couple of drones, a couple of missiles that they can use to create chaos and try to say that, hey, look, we have a powerful military and we have the weapons to bring the U.S. down? Yeah, they could try, but again, these are terrorist tactics, and it doesn't mean they own the battlefield. The U.S. owns the battlefield, and you can see it's getting harder and harder for the IRGC to actually hit anything anymore. And I think this is going to get a lot worse as time goes on. And this is why I do believe the story came out where the deep state players are trying to get them some additional weapons. So if they put the story up, you don't think Trump and team know exactly what they're planning to do? Of course they do. See, the story is for the people of this country. So when you see something, you say, oh, it's China. And they're saying, oh my God, are we going to war with China now? See, this is what they're trying to do. Just like with Zelensky, with Russia. Wait a minute, is Russia getting involved now? Are we going to war? This is how they're trying to start World War III. But look what the Treasury Department just did. The U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC, is taking further action against the Iranian regime's desperate effort to monetize the Strait of Hormuz and prop up the nation's failing economy. OFAC is designated two firms integral to an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps-backed extortion scheme that forces commercial vessels to purchase mandatory maritime insurance to transit the strait. Although this coverage purports to protect vessels from risks such as seizures, these risks are overwhelmingly created by Iran itself through the Persian Gulf Marine Insurance Company and Hormuz Safe Marine Services Authority. The regime brokers IRGC-approved policies designed to extract revenue under the guise of maritime services, including payments and digital assets, to evade sanctions, allowing Iran to tighten control over shipping activity and funnel funds into the IRGC operations. With its economy in freefall and inflation in the triple digits, the regime is desperate for cash. And the United States will not allow Iran to hold global commerce hostage or use international shipping to finance the IRGC's terrorism, aggression, and repression, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says. So, in an attempt to prop up the revenue streams decimated by Operation Epic Fury, Iran has established an illegitimate scheme through the Persian Gulf Marine Insurance Company and the Hormuz Safe Marine Services Authority. And they're trying to get the money from the ships. And again, this is not going to work whatsoever. And it seems that the Treasury Department just shut it all down. The Treasury is also taking action today against multiple shadow fleet vessels responsible for transporting millions of barrels of Iranian crude oil and petroleum products. Iran's shadow fleet provides an essential lifeline to the Iranian regime, which relies on oil sales to bolster its ailing economy. So all of it is being shut down. What is Trump doing? What is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent doing? They're shutting off their funding. Just like their funding for the Democrats and the deep state players, the funding for the IRGC is being shut down. If you don't have the funds, it makes it that much more difficult to operate. But the other thing that's very interesting is that it seems that Saudi Arabia is now joining the U.S. and they are striking Iran-backed terrorist sites in Iraq. So this is coming from the U.S. Central Command and the Saudi Arabian Armed Forces. They conducted a precision strike in Iraq on July 28th against Iran-aligned terrorists that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, directed to attack U.S. forces in the Saudi energy infrastructure. So now, think about what is happening. The terrorists that are spread across Iraq, some in Syria, and many other places, we have the Middle Eastern countries now working with the U.S. to remove those terrorists. Those terrorists are going to be shut down. So when you start to shut down the terrorists that surround Iran and they use them to fight the United States, and you don't have that force anymore, is Iran being isolated right now? Absolutely. So let's see. In the Strait of Hormuz, we have additional pipelines being built. I think there's a total of 15. Oil is being diverted away from the Strait of Hormuz, which means the control over the Strait of Hormuz is going to be worthless. The Treasury shut down their maritime insurance companies where they were getting money from ships where they're saying we're going to protect you. So that has been shut down. They're not getting money that way. They also shut down their shadow fleets. So they're not getting money that way. And now the terrorists that they've been using, they're being destroyed. And Trump now is doing what? He's going to hit the IRGC hard once again. He might even destroy a bridge just to send a message, or maybe even a power supply. I think most likely maybe a couple of bridges first to send a clear message. And as the terrorists are removed around the different countries, Iran will have nothing left. They'll be completely isolated. They'll have no funding. And in the end, the only thing they'll have left is either to escape the country or surrender and be imprisoned, because they will not govern Iran anymore. The deep state players, their leverage is gone. Clandestine says, U.S. and Saudi forces conducted joint strikes on Iran-backed terror sites in Iraq. Trump really brought attention to his alliance with Mohammed bin Salman during his visit to the U.S. to sign the Strategic Defense Agreement in November 2025. I expect Saudi Arabia under new leadership with MBS to play a pivotal role in Trump's plan to bring peace to the Middle East. And I completely and utterly agree with him. And you could see that soon you're going to hear reports coming out of Iran that they're now trapped in everything that they've been trying to do. And soon the deep state players, they're going to realize that they lost completely. And you're going to see that they are no longer in control in Iran. It's just a matter of time, and that clock is ticking down, and it's ticking down pretty darn fast. They don't have any leverage. Trump, we the people, have all the leverage. It's almost like with the tariffs. When everyone thought, oh, look, China, Europe, Canada, they have the leverage. No, we were the consumer. We accept their products. We don't have to accept their products. We can charge more for their products to force the companies back to this country. And Trump is doing the same thing with Iran. We always had the leverage. We have the most powerful military on the planet. The deep state players used to be in control of the most powerful military. They lost that control. They try to beef up Iran, trying to make everyone believe that they were so powerful that no one could defeat them. Actually, if you go back a little bit in time and you go back to Syria, remember when Obama was telling us how powerful ISIS was, that they can't be defeated? It would take 10 years to defeat them. How come Trump was able to defeat them within 1 year or less? How come Putin came in and did the same exact thing? It was all a lie. That's why. So if you're hearing people say that Iran has leverage, they're winning, that they have the ability to stay on forever, it's all fake. All right, whether you're a full-blown MAGA collector or you just want to prank your uncle at Thanksgiving, stick with me on this one because I think you're going to like it. It's called the Trump Patriot Mystery Box, worth up to $90 from retail value. Nobody knows exactly what's inside. There's commemorative pieces, patriotic accessories, random Trump-flavored surprises, basically a grab bag for American pride. If you're serious about the collection, it's an instant upgrade to your stash. Zero effort required. And if you're not that serious, honestly, imagine handing this to somebody and watching their faces when they open it up. That alone might be worth it. Best best part, the box itself is free. You're just covering shipping. Thousands of these are already in the wild, so clearly people are enjoying it. Supplies are limited though, so don't be the person who waited too long and missed it. Takes about 2 minutes, and all you got to do is cover shipping, and it just shows up at your door. Links down below this video. Go grab one before they're gone. Items may vary in each box. Check it out. Go to freepatriotbox.com/X22. They're going to fold in a very short period of time. Trump knows it. He already know he won. Basically, he just has to play it out to the very, very end. And that's exactly what's happening. He keeps giving them a chance. Here's a chance. But each time what he does, he cuts off their leverage. When you cut off the funds, that's their leverage. When you shut down the Strait of Hormuz, that's their leverage. When you remove their tariffs, that's their leverage. When you sanction them and they're not collecting money from their insurance, or their shadow fleets can't deliver any type of oil, that's their leverage. It's all being removed a little bit at a time. When you have oil pipelines being built in the Strait of Hormuz and oil's being pumped away from the Strait of Hormuz, they lose their leverage. Every step of the way, they're losing their leverage. In the end, they lose. Period. The end. That's it. And Trump, every step of the way, he's giving them a chance. He doesn't want to destroy everything. But again, he knows in the end, this is what's going to have to happen. Now, he's not going to destroy the people. He's not going to destroy Carg Island because that's going to be used later on. He's just going to destroy the leverage of the IRGC. Very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is that Fauci, he appeared in front of the Senate. And like all criminals, they do what they do best. They break additional laws. Remember, when a criminal is caught, they don't admit, hey, I'm guilty, I did the crime. They commit other crimes to cover up their crimes. That's what criminals do. Who do you think the deep state players put into these positions? They put the criminals, those people have no moral compass, into these positions because they know they will carry out what needs to be carried out and they will lie about it. Now think about this, and Tom Elliott put this out. During COVID, Fauci averaged 11 media hits a week for 2 years running, totaling 1,741 interviews and an estimated 470 hours of media. Congrats to GMA being the number one super spreader of this contagious disinformation. So he had no problem going on all the media. The media had no problem having him on, and nobody ever questioned him. Nobody ever looked up science. Nobody ever looked up peer-reviewed documentation. They were all on board with this liar. Because again, the fake news is part of the deep state players. And think about it. When his diary came out, how many of the fake news stations actually reported on it? It's pretty much a blackout, except for, I think, Fox News Channel actually reported on it. So CNN, ABC, MS Now, NBC, you name it, it's not even newsworthy to them because, again, they're part of the problem. They are part of the deep state system. And think about this. Let's go back a little bit in time. This is how coordinated it was. Now, it's very hard for people who weren't following along from the very beginning to realize that this has been coordinated worldwide. The WHO was part of it. The fake news was part of it. And the medical association and hospitals, they were part of it. Yes, they all worked together. Those people that were opposed to this, who were trying to speak out, they were censored. In some countries, they were thrown into jail. But let's go back to June 5th, 2020. CNN put this out and said, over 1,000 health professionals signed a letter saying, don't shut down protests using coronavirus concerns as an excuse. So this was in June of 2020. So let's see, does this now, when you look back in time, does this make sense? I mean, it didn't make sense to me back then, but most people were like, oh, okay, this is okay. So they were having protests and 1,000 health professionals said it's okay in June of 2020. I mean, think about it. DC Drano says, never forget that they wanted you locked inside your house for a virus with a 0.3% mortality rate, but they wanted BLM outside burning down our cities. True evil. It was all a lie. And think about this. We had The D.C. mayor go with Fauci door to door trying to convince people to get a vaccine. I mean, this was an entire press thing, and they were hoping that people would join in and say, yes, I need the vaccine. But it seems that they basically knocked on a door, and this man answered the door, and he realized that he was being conned by a con artist. Take a listen.
America are not settled with the information that's been given to us right now. So I'm not going to be lining up taking a shot on a vaccination for something that wasn't clear in the first place. And then you all create a shot in miraculous time. It takes years to create vaccination.
Well, it used to take years.
Okay, it used to.
You know how many years were invested in this approach? About 20 years of science to get us to be able to do it.
20 years is not enough. And 9 months is definitely not enough for nobody to be taking no vaccination that you all came up with.
The only reason I'm talking to you right now, as close as we are, is that I've been vaccinated.
Right.
But if it allows thousands of people like you don't get vaccinated, you're going to let this virus continue to percolate in this country and in this world.
Something like the common flu then, right?
And not
it's
like
much
the
more
common
serious than the flu.
Well, the flu kills a lot of people annually, too.
You know how many people died of the flu the last year? I mean, not this year, virtually none, but the previous year, about 20 to 30,000. You know how many people have died from COVID-19 in the United States? 600,000 Americans.
Well, the number that you all giving that died, that's once again, that's you all's number.
You gonna pass?
Yeah, definitely. Because when you start talking about paying people to get vaccinated, when you start talking about incentivizing things to get people vaccinated, there's something else going on with that. Something else going on.
It is something going on.
There's something else.
You're
going
right.
on.
But I'm glad millions of people like me and most everybody here didn't get an incentive. You know what their incentive was? Protecting their health and protecting the city.
Well,
but I won't keep you anymore.
It's okay, because my incentive, y'all campaign is about fear. It's about inciting fear in people. You all attack people with fear. That's what this pandemic is. It's a fear. It's fear, this pandemic. That's all it is.
And that didn't go the way they thought it was going to go. It blew up in their face, and this man called them out on it. And once again, he wasn't afraid. He was thinking logically. And think about what Fauci lied about. Election Wizard put this out, and this is coming from Kennedy. He lied about masks. He lied about social distancing. He lied about the transmission. He lied about natural immunity. He lied about the wet market. That should tell you everything you need to know. And during the Senate hearing, Fauci came out and said he was pleading the fifth. And once again, he was pardoned. And he really can't plead the fifth, but as criminals do as they do, they don't care if they break the law. He'd rather take that chance than actually answer the questions. That's why he did it. And Rand Paul said, if you're pleading the fifth, there's no reason to have your attorney there. Plus, we do not recognize your attorney. And I told your attorney he should be sitting behind the ropes. And the attorney didn't want to leave. And what did Rand Paul do? He escorted the attorney out of the hearings. And what's very interesting is who is the attorney that Fauci hired? Well, Town Hall put this out and says, Bernie Moreno says to him, do you feel like you're in deep shit? Moreno educates the audience on who Fauci's lawyer, David Schertler, is. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He represented some really great people like Senator Bob Menendez. There's an article here in the Washington Post Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit? And Schertler is the same swamp lawyer who represented Joe Biden's White House doctor during the hearings last year. So this is very interesting. And the same attorney had Biden's doctor also plead the fifth. Seems like there's some type of strategy right there, don't you think? And what's very interesting is Josh Hawley, he tested Fauci since he pleaded the fifth. And Hawley says, what day of the week is it today? Fauci, I respectfully decline to answer. Hawley, what color tie are you wearing? Fauci, I respectfully decline to answer. Hawley, what color is the carpet in front of you? Fauci, I respectfully decline to answer. Howley, let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned. You know that? Your lawyers, shifting nervously in their chairs, they know this isn't about the Constitution. This is about contempt. Contempt for the body and contempt for the American people. And then he went on to cite the actual Supreme Court case. He said the Supreme Court has been clear for a century or more. Brown versus Walker, 1896. When he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyer sitting behind you, shifting nervously in the chairs, knows it. He's in contempt. That is the crime that you actually use against the person who decides to take the Fifth, even though they were pardoned. Now, of course, the Senate, what do? They have to vote on it. But Tony Sirigu put this out and said, the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination protects against real risk of criminal prosecution. Under Supreme Court precedent in Brown v. Walker, 1896, once a person has received a pardon for the relevant federal offenses, he can no longer set up his privilege since he stands with respect to such offenses, as if he had never been committed. The privilege evaporates for those covered federal matters because the jeopardy is gone. Attempting to invoke the Fifth Amendment on questions solely about pardoned federal conduct does not nullify the pardon. It may instead expose the witness to contempt proceedings if a court and congressional body determines that the privilege is unavailable. And this is what they did. They said, listen, if you answer these questions, this is going to open up a can of worms, and they're going to use this against you later on. Most likely there's a grand jury. There's an indictment coming. So I'd rather you take the Fifth, even though we're breaking a law. I'd rather the Senate then vote to hold you in contempt. Then it goes to the DOJ. You might have to serve, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. You might have to pay a fine. But if you talk in front of the Senate and answer these questions and you lie, this is going to make it a lot worse for you. That is what they did right there. Clandestine says, why was Fauci pardoned for any offenses against the United States which he may have committed or taken part in beginning of January 1st, 2014? That's precisely when Fauci and the Obama administration offshored U.S. gain-of-function research to black sites like Ukraine. Hunter was pardoned beginning the exact same day, January 1st, 2014, just before Metabiota received a massive DoD contract from operations in Ukraine. Hunter Biden was the bagman or proxy for Obama-Biden's corrupt dealings in Ukraine, to include their nefarious biological activity in Metabiota. All of this made possible right after the Maidan coup, regime change in Ukraine in early 2014, and the beginning of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and the annexation of Crimea. Fauci and Biden administration admitted their guilt when they issued these pardons. They know they've been caught, and they tried to cover their tracks. Whatever they were doing in Ukraine, it's what they fear most, and all signs seem to point to Metabiota. Absolutely. And think about what the people are seeing now. Why would he plead the Fifth? Is he really guilty? That's what people are thinking. And the other thing that's very interesting, and Sean Davis put this out, he says, Anthony Fauci, many media interviews prior to his refusal to testify to Congress today, called to question the legal basis of his refusal to testify to Congress today. Fauci gave lengthy interview to Scientific America just last month. Fauci also sat down for an extensive interview for the Obama Oral History Project at Columbia University, focused entirely on the time period covered by his pardon. It was published earlier this month. In May of this year, Fauci gave the commencement address at Macalester College in Minnesota. The week after that, Fauci sat down for an hour-long podcast, which, as of this morning, had 30 views and 0 likes. This is an extraordinary fact pattern in light of Fauci's pardon and his refusal to speak to Congress about his behavior covered by the pardon. Then Sean Davis says, if a witness in an ongoing trial pleaded the Fifth on the stand and then immediately walked out to the cameras to answer all the questions from the media he refused to answer in court, you had better believe the judge would find him in contempt of court within seconds. Absolutely. And think about how much money Fauci made during this period of time. Think about how much money was laundered through the system by the deep state players. I think we're starting to find that out now. It was one gigantic money laundering operation. The Vigilant Fox put this out and said, Josh Hawley brings the receipts and exposes Dr. Fauci for using 8 different federal employees on federal time to chase over $1 million in cash prizes for himself. Hawley says you got rich while people were dying. You were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they were doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We got this email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says I'm working on his nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc? Fauci, on the advice of counsel, I take the 5th. Hawley says it was $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award, and he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And once again, he made himself very, very rich. And these are the people that were doing his dirty work. Greg Folkers, Lawrence Tabak, Holly Jaffe, Patricia Conrad, Courtney Billette, Lewis Miller, Catherine Miller, Hugh Auchincloss. So he used federal employees to make himself very, very wealthy. And what else did he do? He stopped the CDC from publicly stating that COVID vaccines were not effective at all in preventing infection and transmission. Mike Benn says if they came out with that statement, it would undermine the DOJ's effort at mandates. It's literally everything we all suspected got banned for saying, which they denied publicly, but confessed in a diary. So again, the bioweapon wasn't to cure you. The bioweapon wasn't there to make you better. The boosters were not there to make you better. Actually, in every single shot that you got, COVID was included. So you would always test positive for COVID, and they would tell you you need another booster. And it would make you have ailments that you never had before, and it would make those people most likely infertile, and they were using this against the people. Remember, they didn't care if you lived, died, got sick, because who profits from this? Oh, that's right, Big Pharma. All the doctors and everything else. And that should tell you everything you need to know. Now, the other thing that Fauci was very worried about, it looks like he was worried about QAnon. Because again, those people doing research, those people that have been telling the truth, he was worried that they were going to get people to believe that he was lying. And yes, a lot of people did believe it. And now a lot more people believe it because he was lying. News Treason Channel 17 says, what are the chances? The last entry in Fauci's diary on page 1141 was made on December 17, 2022 and mentions QAnon. December 17, 2022. It is clear I have not been reporting it every day that the far extreme right and QAnon literally hate me. Well, hate is not strong enough because, again, you hurt people, you killed people, you lied to the people. And that should tell you everything you need to know. And if you don't think he's a monster, if you don't think he's like Mengele in Nazi Germany, MJ Truth Ultra put this out. This is just horrific. My God, they all need to pay dearly. Dr. Fauci sewed the fingers and scalps of aborted babies into the backs of research mice, which the scalps grew fine baby hair. I mean, think about this. He tortured dogs. He used aborted baby parts. I mean, think about what he did right there. That tells you everything you need to know about this guy. And think about this. It came out that Bill Gates had security clearance. Joe Lane says Bill Gates has security clearance. He was just drawn into Fauci investigation narrative. It's all going to be exposed. Fauci is the doorway to many conspiracies across the world, creating viruses and using people as guinea pigs in dangerous experiments for population control. And we know that Bill Gates was doing this in Africa. We know that Bill Gates was behind a lot of this. And all of these people now are going to be coming into the fold, and people are going to be learning about this. That's what this is all about. You have to bring people up to speed. A lot of people in this country don't know about this. A lot of people really didn't believe it. If they believed it, they wouldn't have got themselves injected. They might believe a little bit right now, but the people must know how this is all connected. And that is exactly what is happening. And think about it, every step of the way. What did they try to do with Trump? They tried to stop him because Trump was trying to tell everyone the truth. It didn't come from wet market. It came from the lab. He said we have hydroxychloroquine. It acts like a vaccine. He says we shouldn't be wearing masks. He says we should open up everything. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said the following. Many more people died of COVID under the Biden administration than under the Trump administration. Operation Warp Speed was a spectacular success. In fact, many say one of the most successful things ever done by an American president. I overrode Fauci on this. His ideas were crazy. Also, I said from the beginning that the virus came from the Wuhan laboratory in China. Fauci strongly disagreed, always trying to protect China. I inherited Fauci, who was there since the 80s, but with each passing day, relied less and less on him. He made too many bad calls, like on masks. Remember at the beginning, he was an anti-masker. He then switched to a super masker. In any event, I didn't let him shut the country down, although he wanted to. I went the Federalist way. I let the governors decide. The Republican governors did a much better job than the Democrats. Fauci was largely taken out of play, and then along came Sleepy Joe Biden, who made Fauci a king. I called Biden to tell him Fauci was no good. Either didn't have a clue or was dishonest. The call was well received, but sadly not acted on. Biden went on to give Fauci vast destructive powers. The rest is history. President DJT. Very, very interesting. And I think we were all thinking the same exact thing when Bernie Moreno said to Fauci, who the F do you think you were for doing that? I think we're all thinking it. I think we're always all thinking it. I think those people that weren't paying attention are now thinking it because, again, when you start to look at this, you start to see the truth. Trump then put this out and said, Fauci told everyone he was a great basketball player, so I assumed that he would be easily able to throw a ball to home plate. It turned out that he was a phony at that, just like he was on everything else. He was a terrible athlete, and this, by far, the worst throw I have ever seen in years of watching first pitches. President DJT. And Trump is letting everyone know he's a liar, he's a phony, and you could see it as clear as day. And the only way that Fauci at this point in time can try to get out of this, which he really can't, I think he's done, is use the news media, is lie even more. Hahn says Anthony Fauci has decided to turn this into an all-out brawl because that is all he has left. The case against him is incontrovertible. His own words have exposed lie after lie. His strategy now is to rely on the full backing of the media and his legions of brainwashed superfans, hoping to fight the whole thing to what amounts to draw while ensuring that the substance of what he actually did is never seriously discussed again. It is a risky strategy, but it is the only one available to him, and for all we know, it may even work. Peter Navarro went to prison for refusing to testify, yet there is effectively a 0% chance that a Washington, D.C. jury would do the same to Fauci. After all the award magazine covers, adulation, and years of being treated as a god, Anthony Fauci ends up looking like an ordinary crook. It is not the accountability we're hoping for, but given that no one has been held accountable for anything, seeing Fauci fall from godlike status to invoking the Fifth Amendment is not a bad outcome either. Now remember, this is not a trial. This is not an indictment. He was brought in to be questioned. That is it. The people saw who he was. He got a pardon, and he pleaded the Fifth. The crime for doing that is contempt. If everyone believes that this is it, you're fooling yourselves. Remember, if you're going to hold him accountable or anyone else, there has to be a grand jury. If you're going to hold him accountable, there has to be an indictment. I do believe in the end, that is what we're going to see. So this whole thing in the Senate was to wake people up, to show you who he truly is, so people could hear what he has done and see what he has done and how he's hiding now. So Senator Rand Paul, he's moving to hold Dr. Fauci in contempt after he refused to answer all questions under the subpoena. And it looks like they're going to take a vote next week. Now, you know what the D's are going to do. Do you think they're going to vote for it? Absolutely not. So how does this work? Well, they're going to have a vote. And the Senate committee can vote to recommend a contempt citation. If the full Senate then approves the citation, it is certified and referred to the U.S. attorney. The DOJ has discretion on whether to prosecute. Even if it does, there must still be a grand jury indictment or trial and a conviction before any sentence is imposed. Only after a criminal conviction under federal statute 2 U.S.C. section 192 can imprisonment occur. Statutory penalty if convicted under 2 U.S.C. section 192, willfully refusing to answer questions or produce documents under a valid congressional subpoena is a misdemeanor punishable by a fine not more than $100,000 and or imprisonment for not less than 1 month and not more than 12 months. In a recent high-profile case, we know that Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, for refusing the January 6th committee subpoenas, both were convicted and each received a 4-month prison sentence. So that is what he's looking at if the Senate decides to go through with it. And if the DOJ decides to pick it up, which I think the DOJ would pick it up, and they would hold him in contempt. Now, this is what Fauci played. This is what the lawyers told him to do, because otherwise, if he actually answered the questions, well, that's on the record. And this is why he took this route. But in the end, it's not going to work because this is not the case against him. This is just the start. And the people had to see it. If you're going to go after Fauci, you need a grand jury. You need an indictment. And I do believe that is what's going to happen. Brian Cate says Fauci's broken. The point of this hearing in front of the entire country, as the entire country watches it, isn't to get him to make any admissions of guilt. It's to have the entire country watch this evil little gnome lose his mojo. It's the same guy that sat there for a half a dozen prior hearings, loudly bullshitting everybody. The days of the bullshit are over. The declassifications are picking up speed. He's got no cover. He can't hide. He's going to sit there and invoke the fifth throughout the entire hearing. The bluster is gone. The chutzpah has disappeared. The arrogance is still there, but he's demonstrating there's only one way he can limit the damage his own lies have done to him. And now we get the spectacle of Fauci's lawyer being removed from the room because he's not following the rules of congressional testimony. And everybody who has watched this or on social media, they're watching all of this. And they're realizing who he truly is, because the facts, the documents that are coming out right now show that he lied to America. Chris Martenson put this out and said, according to this DARPA document dated August 13th, 2021, they knew at the time COVID came from a lab, that the mRNA vaccines worked poorly, that ivermectin worked since April 2020, that hydroxychloroquine worked, ditto. DARPA informed the Inspector General, and all parties chose to say nothing to the public about any of it. Let that sink in. That should tell you everything you need to know. And once again, every step of the way, when Trump came out with hydroxychloroquine, what did Fauci do? They ran experiments on very, very sick people. They overdosed them. They killed them. The Lancet came out with a fake study. They had to retract it later on. The fake news would hit anyone that mentioned ivermectin, say it was horse paste. You don't use horse paste. This is what they did. And they kept the narrative going. They are responsible for all this. They knew exactly what they were doing, because if they were truly investigative reporters and they were truly looking into this, they would look at the science. There were plenty of peer-reviewed documentation. There was plenty of documentation showing them that what Fauci was saying was a complete and utter lie. But they didn't want to go that route. Trump tried to tell everyone. He kept putting it out there. But think about what the fake news did. Think about what the D's did. Think about what the medical establishment did. Think about what the WHO did. They were all coordinating this. Why? Because they had to overthrow the United States government. And yes, they were pushing the Great Reset. Yes, they wanted depopulation. Yes, they wanted people sick. Yes, the big pharma wanted to make a lot of money. All of that goes together with all of this. But the main thing, they really had to get rid of Trump, because if they didn't get rid of Trump, they couldn't push their agenda. But I want to go back to post 4848. And this is October 11th, 2020. It says, sometimes public awareness of certain events prevents occurrence. Sometimes public awareness of certain events forces accountability. And I do believe sometimes you have to actually show the people. And now that people see this, the next time around, people are not going to go along with it. It's going to be very, very difficult for the deep state players. And with people seeing this now and starting to understand this, the people are going to demand accountability. Remember, what we're seeing right now is the buildup. The cases are building up. The cases now are getting the entire country on board for what is to come. Without seeing this, you're not going to be on board. Without seeing the election rigging, without seeing what they did with COVID, how it ties to election rigging, without seeing the bioweapon, without seeing the lies, without seeing the diary, without seeing how the fake news lied about the Hunter Biden laptop, without seeing all of this, no one would believe it. But in the end, when everyone sees all this, people are going to say enough is enough. We need accountability. And that's what this is all being built upon, because once the people say we need accountability and then the indictments come out, the people are going to be behind it. Just like the people are behind deportation. Just like the people are behind closing the borders. Just like the people are behind removing the regime in Iran. Just like the people are behind arresting those people that were treasonous to this country. It's all coming together. And it's going to be a complete and utter disaster for the deep state players. I mean, since we're talking about COVID, let's go back a little bit in time to James Tallarico, because if you go back a little bit in time, he was posting crazily out there about COVID and how we should believe Fauci. This is what he put out there. I got the coolest action figure for Christmas. Thank you to all the healthcare superheroes working today. Let's help by getting vaxxed and boosted. And it's a real-life action figure of Fauci wearing a mask. Brandon Gill responds, said, do you think James Tallarico still plays with his Fauci action figure? Governor Hot Wheel says, Christmas in July. So once again, you could see that all these people, they were also pushing all of this. But what's very interesting, since we're talking about James Tallarico, the RNC research unearthed something very, very interesting. James Tallarico, who said he hates Christianity, praised Islam for inspiring his religious beliefs. I've learned as much about my faith from Salman's tradition, from the Islamic mystics, from poets like Rumi, as much as I've from Christian authors. Then the RNC research put this out. James Tallarico, who repeatedly claims that Republicans are trying to rig elections, used his mom's address to run for office in Texas, a violation of state election law. Again, these people are liars. These people are criminals. And eventually you're going to see that, yes, most of those people that are installed in local government in D.C., they've always been criminals. They just put on a pantsuit, a suit, a skirt, pretending they're like us. But in the background, you're going to find out that all these people are criminals. And most of the people, they're going to probably be arrested for some type of crime that they have committed. I mean, you already see it now. I think it's just going to get worse and worse as time goes on. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and Eric already put this out, the Department of War has removed traitor DNI James Clapper's name from a Defense Intelligence Agency facility in D.C. The Clapper Leadership Hall is no more, and his name has been replaced with Thomas Knowlton from the Revolutionary War, which is very, very interesting. Joe Lange responds to this, and he's pointing to post 3116, March 18, 2019. It's a picture of Clapper. If you notice, they always give the criminals awards for doing what they do. He says Clapper has been really quiet for years now, trying to stay under the radar. I think he just shit himself. Why? Do you think it's just a coincidence that Clapper's name is removed from the Defense Intelligence Agency building on the exact same day as Lindsey Graham's very public funeral? Was Trump sending Clapper a message? Have you seen this Q drop? Committee approved 12 to 10 today. Why it matters. Graham now has sweeping authority to subpoena documents and more than 50 individuals related to the Russia investigation, including former FBI Director James Comey, former CIA Director John Brennan, and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. Lindsey Graham fought for and got subpoenas approved for Comey, Brennan, and Clapper to look into their involvement to frame Trump for Russian collusion. And don't forget this important Q drop. Too bad for Clapper. That Loretta Lynch already cut a deal. Very interesting. So it looks like Clapper now is coming into the light, and people are going to start to learn about what he did. Remember when the fake news kept saying that the walls are closing in on Trump? Well, literally, the walls are closing in on the deep state players. Now, very interestingly, DNI Pulte, his days now are numbered in the ODNI because they just confirmed Jay Clayton. Congratulations to Jay Clayton. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But DNI Pulte, he put out certain declassified information. And Joe Lange once again explains, Pulte released the declassified CIA evidence that was being hidden from Trump by the intelligence community that proved China was trying to collude with the Democrats to steal elections in 2018 and 2020. Anybody remember Trump displaying a red folder with family members at a rally before the 2020 election? Classified information. Speaking of red folders, anybody remember what happened back in 2022 to the previous leader of the CCP and second most powerful figure in China? Did you see on live TV during the biggest CCP meeting that they publicly took away his red folder and then humiliated him by forcibly escorting him out of the meeting? Did we actually witness President Xi removing all authority from former Chinese leader Hu Jintao publicly because he was the one responsible for Chinese collusion with Democrats to seal the 2020 election? Q drop, 4620, July 31st, 2020. Infiltration. Only those who can be controlled via blackmail or like beliefs were installed in critical leadership positions across all political and non-political control and command positions, CCP. CCP necessary to ensure protective blanket insurance. Traitors everywhere. D-leadership in joint ops with China. CCP an effort to regain power. It was never about the virus. Sequence of events. Who benefits the most? D party? China CCP? Russia is the enemy. China is our friend. MSDNC, social media, programming, all assets deployed. Russian collusion was always a false narrative to hide the Chinese collusion with the Democrats. Putin and Xi are allied with Trump to remove the cabal and their worldwide puppets. That's why Xi humiliated and removed former Chinese leader Hu Jintao. Q drop 140, November 11, 2017. What if China, Russia, and others are coordinating with POTUS to eliminate the New World Order? Do you want to know why Trump helped elevate Biden to win the Democrat nomination and then allowed him to steal the election? Just a coincidence that declassified evidence revealed that Biden family was compromised and controlled by China? Just a coincidence that acting DNI Pulte has been rapidly firing many people within the intelligence community? Just a coincidence that declassified evidence proves that the intelligence community tried to hide the fact that Biden family was compromised by China, claiming the Hunter laptop was all Russian collusion and used their assets in the media to downplay the evidence of the Hunter Biden laptop? No such thing as coincidences. Are you seeing the pattern? Are you seeing the template? Remember this important statement: transparency and prosecution. There's simply no other way. The daily drop of declassified evidence is totally transparency to the American people in order to prepare them for the coming mass prosecutions. It's very important table setting for the future. The only chance we have at preventing this again in the future is to completely inform the American people of the evidence so that they will demand and support full prosecutions of the criminals and the traitors. That's what we are witnessing. Everything is planned and timed. And that's absolutely true. The people are going to demand accountability and justice. And like we said before, Jay Clayton, he was confirmed. And it looks like they did everything they possibly could do to get DNI Pulte out of there. Because what did he do? He had 5 rounds of layoffs. He removed 30% in just a few weeks. And the deep state players said, holy crap, okay, we need to get him out of there. Let's just approve Jay Clayton. What do you think Jay Clayton's going to do? He's going to remove even more people. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, congratulations to the great Jay Clayton on his confirmation by the United States Senate to be the next director of national intelligence. Jay is outstanding in every way and will do a spectacular job as a director. President DJT. Absolutely. And with all this happening, you could see the Ds, they're now panicking over the elections because once again, they're being exposed. And what's very interesting is that Governor Mikey Sherrill, she just announced she will block the release of 6,000 plus non-citizens to the Trump admin who were illegally registered to vote in her state. And she just referred to the non-citizens as citizens of New Jersey. Does that make any sense? Well, it does, because they are her constituents. How do you think she got into that position? And you really think this is going to work? You think she's going to be able to hide this information? Absolutely not. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that these states, New Jersey and all the other D states, yes, and the Republican states, but more so the D states because they resist, because they have their cheating system. Those states have to clean up their voter rolls because federal law makes this removal mandatory. So they must be doing this. The blue states are going to be forced to clean the voter registration rolls because, again, it is mandatory by law. Now, again, since they are criminals, you know they're going to resist. You know they're not going to want to do this. So you have to think like a criminal. Don't put your moral compass on them because they are criminals. So what is a criminal going to do? Wait, I can't rob the store? Well, I'm going to rob the store. I can't murder someone? I can't rape someone? Well, I'm going to do that because, again, they're a criminal. They don't have the moral compass. They're not abiding by the laws. If they're abiding by the laws, they'd be a law-abiding citizen and they wouldn't be a criminal. So you have to think like a criminal. And all those people that are installed in these positions, they're installed for a reason because they don't have a moral compass. They're criminals. They're very good at lying. That's who they want in there. They select them on purpose. Those are the people that they wanted. And eventually what's going to happen is the people are going to see exactly who and what they are. People are already starting to do that. They already see what they're pushing, communism. See, Trump set up the whole thing so people would see their true agenda, that it wouldn't even be a question. And you would have to make a decision. Do you want this to be a communist country or don't you? And those people that are still part of the D Party, they're going to have to make a decision in the end. And Trump, he's going to make it easier for the people to make that decision because we want the Save America Act. And Trump has been pushing for this because, again, if we have the Save America Act or the executive order or both, that means those criminals won't be able to steal the elections. And that will show everyone the truth. And you can see that, yes, there are certain individuals within the Senate that are continually pushing back. And Trump would like the filibuster removed. Now, I think he went to the extreme. I mean, it would be great if we got rid of it. But I think he went to the extreme to basically have people concentrate on that and then try to get maybe the budget bill passed on the other side, which has the Save America Act. And I do believe maybe this is a strategy, but we'll have to see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, it looks like there are more senators right now who are on board with no recess until the Save America Act is passed. The Persistence put this out and said, Mike Lee, Rick Scott, Jim Banks, Ashley Moody, Darlene Graham, Tommy Tuberville, Bill Hagerty, Katie Britt, and Todd Young. They're all on board right now, which is a good thing. And remember, Trump can call them back whenever he wants. And Trump is really pushing the budget bill because, again, we only need 51 votes for that, which is very, very interesting. It's almost like the filibuster if you really think about it. Trump put this out and says, Senator Ron Johnson is working hard with the Senate Republican leadership to adopt a budget resolution before the August recess. This is the first step towards getting as much of the Save America Act as possible in the budget bill, funding our troops and helping our farmers. I'm calling on the Senate to get this critical step done before the August recess. This resolution can be adopted at a simple majority threshold. Get it done. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. And remember, what they put onto this bill is not the full Save America Act. It's a watered-down version, basically voter ID, one-day voting, paper ballots, almost like the executive order that Trump's going to be putting out there. And actually, it has almost the same exact requirements as removing the filibuster and getting a 51 Senate vote, which is very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the deep state players, they created the government to act like a corporation that has no competitors. What do I mean by this? Well, once the central bank was created in 1913, and we came off the gold standard in 1971, and the corruption got worse and worse as time went on, the government actually turned into a criminal organization. And I think Elon Musk pretty much sums it up. And Dustin put this out, and it says, Elon Musk described the government in 4 sentences and never made a political argument. He read out the schematic. Elon says, government is a corporation in the limit. It is the most corporate thing. It is a maximum corporation, and it's also a monopoly, and also is the only one that's allowed legally to do violence. Take the flag off it, and look what's underneath. It collects revenue. It employs millions. It owns land. It writes the rules it operates under. Is this a corporation or is this a criminal syndicate? Let me read on. That's a corporation, line for line, with 3 edits. You cannot choose a competitor. You cannot decline the transaction. It is the only one on earth permitted to use force to make you pay. Every other relationship in your life required your consent. This one required your birth. Musk, why would you want to give a corporation with no competition that can't even really go bankrupt more money? There is no condition under which it stops. None was ever built in. Everything that has ever gotten better got better by being allowed to die. Evolution runs on extinction. Science runs on falsification. Markets run on bankruptcy. Your own body runs on cells that kill themselves on schedule. Failure isn't cruelty. It's information. It's the only mechanism in the universe that tells you a system, it was wrong. Take it away and the system doesn't become permanent. It becomes blind. A company that misreads the world loses customers. A government that misreads the world receives a large budget the following year. It's the only structure we built where failure is what feeds it. Musk, I think the role of government should be that of like a referee and not a player on the field. A referee was never supposed to be weak. He was supposed to be outside the outcome. The moment he starts scoring, he isn't corrupt. Corruption would mean he broke a rule. He wrote the rules. He's just playing, and he's the only one allowed to keep score. A system like that never gets caught. It only gets old. Every civilization that collapsed did it with its institutions still standing. The building stayed, the title stayed, the revenue arrived on schedule. What died was the feedback, the signal telling it that reality had moved on, and it hadn't. Rome didn't fall in a day. It stopped listening for a century and called it stability. That's the actual danger, not tyranny, deafness with a budget. And it runs deeper than politics. Everything you love is precious because it can be lost. A promise means something because the person making it will die. Your time matters because you don't get more of it. Morality isn't the tragedy of being human. It's the only reason anything costs anything. Then we built one institution exempt from all of it. No death, no scarcity, no consequence. A thing can never lose anything, deciding what everything is worth. It bills in dollars. It's paid in hours. And it has never once felt what an hour costs. It can be wrong for a century and feel nothing. You get 80 years and have to be right the first time. It doesn't have to win the argument. It only has to outlive the person making it. And it has never lost that one. It borrows against the people who don't exist yet, and they will pay because it will still be standing when they arrive. Then we handed it the only gun. This isn't a conspiracy. Conspiracy need competence and coordination. This is a design flaw, and design flaws only need time. That's the good news. A conspiracy can't be proven or fixed. A design flaw can be both. Everything good in your life exists because something was permitted to fail on the way to it. Every medicine, every machine, every idea that survived contact with reality. The one institution that cannot fail is the one holding the gun. That isn't a warning. It's an engineering problem. And every permanent thing on earth was designed by people who weren't. And when you really read this, it is a system, a criminal syndicate system that found the ultimate way of being in charge of everything. And it allows itself to be this criminal organization. And there is nothing that could stop it unless people see it, unless people understand that it is a criminal syndicate. And then it could be stopped. And this is why Trump is fighting. This is why he's created the counterinsurgency. This is why he's making everything transparent, because you must see it. And the White House put out a post and it says, finish this fight. And there's music behind the scenes, and Awaken Outlaw says, this is the Halo theme music. I asked Rock about the song's meaning. The iconic theme music of the Halo video game franchise, composed by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, was designed to invoke ancient mystery, sacred weight, and primal urgency. And I do believe Trump has been fighting since he came down the escalator, which we know, and he's taking out the deep state players. And it is working. And they're getting weaker and weaker as time goes on. And Trump is winning. The people are winning. And in the end, people will understand what it took to take back the country. And once you understand what it took and what they took from us, you're never going to want to give up your freedoms again. And that's what this is all about. He's teaching people to be Americans. He's teaching people to be fighters again. He's teaching people that this cannot be allowed. And the only way for people to keep it is to fight for it. And that's why he brought us down this path. And that's why, in the end, we're going to win, just like the first revolution. Why? Because the patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.